Chapter 1. Below the rotting canopy, the jungle swallowed the world, not in silence, nor in peace, but with a cacophony of hissing insects, shrieking birds, and the grinding of unseen titanic things slithering through the muck just beyond sight. The air beneath Lustria's canopy was a thing alive. It pressed down like a wet shroud, thick with the stench of decay and the musk of predator and prey alike. The sky, if it existed, was long lost to the choking green above. Here, beneath 1,000 layers of vine-choked rot and fungus-riddled trees, the Skaven came, skittering and gnashing with barely leashed hunger. Warlord Skrit-Norbite marched at the head of the column, perched upon the rusting frame of a rattling palanquin dragged by 4 chained rat ogres. His snout twitched beneath a splint of blackened bone that served as a makeshift helm, and his beady red eyes glimmered with ambition, a greed that simmered hotter than the warp-rot fever eating his lungs. On his back jutted a pitted halberd of warp-forged steel, its blade humming with sickly green light. Behind him, 100 clawpacks from Clan Frict scuttled in loose formation. Many bore the livery of tunnelers, heavy drills, rusted goggles, and cumbersome back-mounted warp-boring devices clanked with every step. Their fur was matted, their armor scavenged from corpses or stolen from other clans less fortunate. Slaves, many skinks. Some captured clan rats dragged sledges of gear, supplies, and warpstone canisters, their whimpers lost beneath the guttural snarling of their captors. The jungle watched, and it waited. "Move, scurry faster," Skrit barked, bile catching in his throat as he coughed into the frayed edge of a fungal-stained cloak. "We are near, closer than ever before. Yes, the gold, the power it calls sings to me. Do not stop for the bloodsuckers." As if summoned, a scream erupted from the left flank. A rat man in rusted mail spasmed and collapsed, his face suddenly a boiling mask of red. Dozens of tiny black darts protruded from his snout and neck. Jungle reeds rustled. Shadows moved. The jungle giggled, high and chittering. "Poison darts," hissed Skrit. "Ward guards. Kill the trees if you must." Warp fire pistols flared as Jezzael sharpshooters unleashed hissing shots into the underbrush, torching fern and leaf alike. A thick fog of acrid smoke bloomed, masking the shrieks of whatever it was that had been lurking in the mist. But the Skaven didn't stop. They never did. Blood and death were a constant. It was the reward that mattered. Skrit's mind returned to the map, scratched into bone with dried blood taken from a ruined Lizardmen temple far up the coast. A lesser chieftain had brought it to him weeks ago, squealing and gurgling as Skrit shoved a warp-forged blade into his guts for daring to negotiate. The map had led them here, into the festering green belly of Lustria, where old magic pulsed like a dying heartbeat beneath the earth. Xual-Tec, the name hissed in his mind like a curse. A city said to be untouched since the great cataclysm, untouched and filled with golden idols, living crystal, and the long-lost arcana of the old ones. He would be a warlord no more after this. He would be Arch-Warlord Skrit-Norbite, first of his name, blessed of the horned rat. Yes. But the jungle hated dreamers. As night fell, a sickly green light glowed through the trees, chem lamps borne by the engineers, casting long shadows over moss-covered stones, half swallowed by the roots of cyclopean trees. The air buzzed louder now, not just with insects, but something deeper, a vibration, a thrum. The earth hummed. "Begin, boar!" Skrit screeched, leaping from his palanquin as the first ridge of black stone emerged from the roots of an overgrown hillock. Carvings peeked out from under the moss serpentine patterns, sharp-edged glyphs that twisted and shimmered when not directly looked at. The entrance to Xual-Tec was below. Teams of rat-men assembled the warp borers, groaning machines with spinning teeth and pulsating warpstone cores. The engineers, twitching and half-mad, activated them with reverent glee. The air filled with the stench of ozone and burning meat as the drills screamed into the soil. It did not go unnoticed. Miles away, in a chamber sealed by spells older than empires, a single eye flickered open. Not a living thing, but a carving, obsidian set in gold, slitted like a predator's. The air around it warped and shimmered. One of the glyphs on the wall cracked, letting out a sigh of trapped air that smelled of rot and formaldehyde. In the camp, Grey Seer Vikla Onehorn convulsed and vomited a stream of black blood onto the stones. His fur bristled as he clawed at his own face, hissing, "Wrong, wrong it is, yes, yes. The air cries. The stone remembers." Skrit ignored him. "Dig, dig, faster." The drills bit deep into the earth, chewing through rock and old bone alike. Something snapped in the ground. A tremor rolled through the camp. For a moment, all went still. Then a section of the earth collapsed with a roar, swallowing 3 drilling teams and half of a rat ogre. Skrit rushed forward, peering into the black pit. Faint light emanated from below, a cold, green glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. Far below, a chamber opened up like a festering wound in the ground. He laughed, a broken bubbling sound. "We have found it. Xual-Tec is ours. Go inside. Brave, loyal warriors. Loot all things that shine." Few moved immediately. The pit yawned wide, breathing out air that smelled of old blood and incense. It was not the stink of death, but of something waiting to awaken. The seer hissed and scuttled backwards. No, we are not alone. Something sings below." Skrit grabbed the nearest clan rat and hurled him bodily into the pit. The rat's scream echoed long, then stopped with a wet crunch. Skrit turned back. Now, go down, or join him." The Skaven obeyed. They always did until they didn't. Ropes were dropped. Climbing claws dug into the loose stone. One by one, the Skaven descended into the black wound, into the belly of Xual-Tec. What they found below was not riches. Not yet. The chamber was impossibly vast, its roof lost in darkness, its walls carved with glyphs that pulsed faintly with ancient magic. Massive statues of Saurian warriors lined the sides, frozen in mid-strike, each at least 3 times the height of a rat ogre. Their eyes, once blank, now glimmered faintly. Dead silence. Skrit descended last, flanked by his bodyguard, heavily armed storm vermin with halberds etched in warpstone and teeth filed to needle points. They spread out cautiously, tails twitching. "Light it," Skrit commanded. One of the engineers unpacked a warp flare. It exploded with a hiss, casting the chamber in sickly green light. That was when they saw the floor. Bones. Thousands, no, millions of them, crushed underfoot, fused into the very stone. Lizardmen, Skaven, human, things unidentifiable, a graveyard of ages past. And far ahead, barely visible, a great golden door sealed with the sigil of the old ones. Skrit's greed flared hotter. He didn't notice the statue's eyes flash once. He didn't hear the subtle shifting of stone behind him. But Seer Vikla did. "Skrit, fool, you wake death. They watch us now. The city is not sleeping, it dreams. The dream hates hungers." Then the ground shuddered. A low, ululating roar echoed through the chamber, deep as thunder, ancient as the world. One of the storm vermin screamed as a massive claw shot from the dark and impaled him, lifting his twitching body into the air. The others turned, weapons ready too slow. From the shadows, a Saurus guard emerged, its hide like petrified stone, eyes glowing with cold, divine hatred. It moved with terrifying purpose. Others stirred behind it. The statues had not been statues. The dead were no longer sleeping. Xual-Tec had awakened. Chapter 2. The City Beneath the Earth. The silence was wrong. Skaven were creatures of noise, of scrabbling claws, muttered curses, the constant chitter of fear and hunger. Yet as the warband pushed deeper into the underbelly of Xual-Tec, even they felt compelled to whisper, as though the city itself might hear them breathe. The vast chamber into which they had broken lay far beneath the jungle roots, a cavern of impossible scale and geometry. The walls were not rough-hewn stone, but smooth, slanted plains of black-green rock veined with gold, each surface etched with glyphs that hurt the eye to follow. The ceiling arched high above, vanishing into darkness, supported by titanic pillars carved in the likeness of coiled serpents and crouching saurian gods. Light came from no flame nor torch. Instead, crystalline growths jutted from the walls and floored geomantic nodes, still glowing faintly with cold emerald radiance despite the passage of uncounted ages. Their glow cast long, distorted shadows, stretching Skaven forms into grotesque parodies of themselves. Warlord Norbite stood at the threshold, breathing heavily, nostrils flaring. The air tasted of stone dust and ancient incense, sharp and dry compared to the fetid jungle above. His eyes darted across the chamber, greed momentarily tempered by unease. "No guards," he muttered. "No warriors. No fight. Grey Seer Vikla Onehorn clutched his staff close, claws trembling. "That is worse," he whispered. "City does not abandon itself. It waits." Skrit ignored him. "Spread out," the warlord snapped. "Loot, take everything. Gold, crystal, idols. Break what you cannot carry. Hurry. At once the silence fractured. Clanrats surged forward, paws scrabbling over the smooth stone, their squeals echoing in the vastness. Engineers followed, eyes shining as they inspected the crystals, tapping and chipping at them with rune tools. Slaves were shoved ahead to trigger traps, their fear a disposable resource. The first treasures lay scattered openly, as if offered, golden plaques embedded in the walls, engraved with spiraling symbols, bas-reliefs depicting towering reptilian figures commanding stars and mountains alike, stone plinths bearing jade idols shaped like coiled serpents, their gem eyes reflecting the green glow. Skaven swarmed them. One clanrat pried loose a jade idol and bit into it, shrieking in triumph when his teeth cracked. Another tore a golden plaque from the wall and was crushed when it fell atop him, flattening his body with a wet crunch. Laughter rippled through the ranks. They defaced everything. Glyphs were smeared with filth, sacred reliefs hacked apart for embedded gems. One particularly bold rat clambered onto the lap of a colossal saurian statue, a Saurus warrior frozen mid-roar, and carved his clan mark into its chest, squealing with delight. Nothing happened. The absence of immediate consequence emboldened them further. Skrit stalked through the chamber, boots crunching on ancient bone fragments ground into the floor. He ran a claw along a crystal growth, feeling the faint vibration within. Power hummed there, old power, orderly and precise, utterly unlike the raw madness of Warpstone. This city was rich, he hissed. Rich beyond counting. We take all. Clan Frict will rule. The warband pressed onward, following a broad causeway deeper into the city. The floor tiles changed from dark stone to polished gold, inlaid with patterns that formed a vast circular design, interlocking lines that radiated outward like a frozen ripple. At the center stood a raised dais, upon which rested a cracked obsidian sarcophagus bound in bands of luminous crystal. Grey Seer Vikla recoiled at the sight. His horns throbbed painfully. Whispers brushed his mind, not words, but impressions. Cold purpose, ancient judgment, the weight of stars pressing down upon insignificant flesh. "No, no," he croaked. "Do not touch. Not that." A clan rat had already leapt onto the dais. He danced atop the sarcophagus, chittering triumphantly, then raised his pickaxe and brought it down with a clang. The sound rang through the chamber like a struck bell. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the glyphs along the walls flared brighter. The geomantic crystals pulsed in unison, their glow intensifying to a blinding emerald glare. A deep, resonant hum rolled through the city, vibrating through stone, bone, and flesh alike. The Skaven froze, ears flattening as the sound drilled into their skulls. What is that?" someone squeaked. The floor beneath them shifted. Lines of light traced themselves along the golden tiles, racing outward from the dais. Ancient mechanisms, dormant since before the coming of man, began to stir. Stone ground against stone somewhere deep below. The sound like the awakening of a buried god. The clan rat atop the sarcophagus laughed, then screamed as the crystal bands tightened, snapping back into place. The lid sealed itself with a thunderous crack, crushing him flat, his blood seeping into the seams and vanishing as though drunk by the stone. Panic rippled through the Skaven ranks. "Trap trick," Skrit roared. "Break it! Smash everything!" Too late. The statues began to move. At first it was subtle, a shift of weight, a scrape of stone against stone. Then eyes ignited, glowing with cold blue-white light. One of the Saurus statues stepped down from its plinth, its movement fluid and silent despite its massive size. The stone shell cracked and sloughed away, revealing living scales beneath dark, scarred, ancient. It did not roar. It did not charge. It simply vanished. A clan rat at the edge of the chamber jerked as something invisible tore through him, lifting him into the air. His scream cut off abruptly, replaced by a spray of blood that pattered across the golden tiles. His body fell in 2 pieces. Another Skaven disappeared into the darkness, dragged screaming between the pillars. Shadows moved where no shadows should. "They are here, here!" Vikla shrieked. "The Guardians, wake, wake!" The city erupted into chaos. Skaven scattered in all directions, trampling one another in their desperation. Jezzails barked, warp lightning crackled, and warp fire scorched ancient stone, but the attacks struck only empty air. The Saurus moved with terrifying speed, appearing only in the instant before death. A storm vermin captain raised his halberd, only for a spectral blur to pass through him. A heartbeat later, his head slid from his shoulders. Blood slicked the golden floor, pooling in the engraved channels and following their patterns as if guided. The glow from the crystals dimmed and brightened rhythmically, like a slow, inexorable pulse. From the far reaches of the chamber came a voice. It was not sound as mortals understood it, but a pressure behind the eyes, a vast and distant intellect brushing against lesser minds. Images flooded the Skaven's thoughts, stars wheeling in cold heavens, continents rising and sinking, endless ranks of scaled warriors marching to a purpose long forgotten. Judgment. Vikla collapsed, clawing at his skull. Slan speaks, Ancient One, forgive, forgive. The reply was merciless. The ancient engines of Xual-Tec fully awakened. Sections of the floor dropped away, revealing pits lined with spinning obsidian blades. Dart launchers snapped from the walls, filling corridors with hissing clouds of venomous needles. Stone doors slammed shut, sealing off, fleeing Skaven into killing grounds. Skrit fought his way through the carnage, bellowing orders no one obeyed. His halberd bit into a saurus that materialized before him, sparks flying as warpstone met enchanted scale. The creature recoiled, but did not fall. It struck back with a single blow, hurling Skrit across the chamber to crash against a pillar. He rose, coughing, blood frothing at his mouth, and saw his army dying. The city had not been abandoned. It had been waiting, and now, beneath the rotting canopy of the world, Xual-Tec began its purge. Chapter 3. Wrath of the Cold Ones. Xual-Tec no longer slept. The city breathed now, stone lungs drawing in ancient air, exhaling judgment through corridors that twisted like the innards of a great buried beast. The geomantic pulse that had once been a distant hum was now a thunderous heartbeat, reverberating through every wall, every glyph, every slab of sanctified stone. With each pulse, more of the city awakened, and with each awakening, the Skaven died. The tunnels became slaughterhouses. Saurus warriors emerged from sealed alcoves and hidden chambers in disciplined ranks, their movements precise and merciless. They did not shout, did not snarl or roar. Their silence was worse than any war cry. Bronze-edged weapons flashed in the crystal light, each blow delivered with the inevitability of a falling star. Storm vermin formations shattered under their advance, halberds clanging uselessly against enchanted scales before being ripped from nerveless paws. Temple guard followed, taller, broader, their crested helms marked with glyphs of rank and sacred duty. They moved as one, shields interlocked, spears thrusting with mechanical precision. Warp lightning arced across their ranks, scorching scale and gold alike. But the guard did not falter. They advanced through the fire, eyes burning with cold purpose, crushing Skaven beneath shield and foot. And in the darkness beyond the light, something worse hunted. Cold Ones? They came without warning, low, sinuous shapes slithering along ceilings and walls, claws scraping stone without sound. Their eyes gleamed faintly, feral and hungry, their hides mottled with ancient scars. Some were bound in crude harnesses, others bore remnants of ceremonial armor, but many were little more than beasts awakened predators that had starved for centuries and now found prey in abundance. A Skaven engineer vanished mid-scream, dragged screaming into a side tunnel. The scream cut off abruptly, replaced by wet crunching sounds and the tearing of flesh. Others followed, picked off, one by one, as panic shattered any remaining cohesion. The warband split. Some fled blindly into uncharted passages, pursued by the echoing footfalls of saurian hunters. Others turned on one another, fighting over dwindling supplies. Warpstone canisters clutched like lifelines. Clanrats shoved wounded comrades into the path of oncoming Saurus, buying themselves seconds of life. Grey Seavikler One Horn was trampled underfoot, his shrieks drowned out as Cold Ones tore into his convulsing body, snapping his staff in half and scattering its bound charms across the blood-slick floor. The city watched, and it culled. Warlord Skrit Norbite staggered through the chaos, blood matting his fur, his breath ragged and wheezing. His halberd was chipped and slick with gore, his armor dented and cracked. Around him clustered the remnants of his guard, less than a dozen now, eyes wide with terror, tails lashing. "This way, Skrit snarled, forcing command into his voice. "Heart Temple! Old maps say power there. Escape device? Move!" They plunged into a descending passage, the walls narrowing as they went. The air grew hotter, drier, tinged with ozone, and something else, sunlight, remembered, not felt, Behind them came the steady, relentless pursuit, the scrape of claws, the measured tread of Saurus feet, the distant roars of Cold Ones echoing through the stone. The passage opened into a vast circular chamber. This was the heart of Xual-Tec. At its center rose a colossal device, a solar engine suspended above a dais of gold and obsidian. Rings of crystal rotated slowly around a blazing core of captured light, each movement accompanied by a resonant hum that set teeth on edge. Glyphs crawled across its surface, shifting and reordering themselves in patterns too complex to follow. The chamber was warm, almost unbearably so, as if standing beneath a desert sun. Shadows retreated to the edges, clinging to the walls where massive murals depicted ancient wars and cosmic alignments. At the far end of the chamber rested a second dais, upon which lay a sarcophagus of black stone veined with gold, larger and more ornate than any they had yet seen. An old blood's tomb. The Skaven hesitated, awed despite themselves. Skrit's eyes burned with desperate hope. Yes, this is it. Power engine. We use it. Escape or burn city. Either good. One of the engineers, his fur singed and eyes wild, crept toward the solar engine. Warpstone might bend it, he babbled. Make it open paths, tear hole in air. Do it, Skrit hissed. Now. They dragged forward canisters of warpstone, prying them open with trembling claws. Sickly green light spilled across the golden floor, clashing violently with the solar engine's pure radiance. As shards were jammed into the device's outer rings, the hum deepened, becoming a shrill, discordant whine. The glyphs flickered, the city screamed, stone cracked, light flared blindingly bright, then guttered as warp energy bled into the ancient mechanisms. The solar engine bucked against its restraints, rings spinning wildly, crystals fracturing under the strain. The air tore open in places, revealing brief glimpses of impossible voids beyond. Then the Guardians arrived. Temple Guard poured into the chamber, forming a shield wall between the Skaven and the sarcophagus. Saurus warriors followed, weapons raised, eyes fixed not on the Skaven, but on the desecrated solar engine. Their anger was palpable, a psychic pressure that made lesser minds whimper. From above, Cold Ones dropped from hidden ledges, landing amidst the Skaven with bone-shattering force. One lunged at Skrit, jaws snapping inches from his throat, before a storm vermin hurled himself into its path, dying in a spray of blood. Hold them, Skrit shrieked. Just moments. More power. The engineer shoved another fistful of warpstone into the engine. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. A beam of warped light lanced out, carving a molten trench through the chamber floor and punching through a temple guard as if he were parchment. The solar engine howled, its core flaring violently as the ancient containment failed. The sarcophagus cracked, a hairline fracture split its surface, golden light spilling out, accompanied by a wave of crushing pressure. The Skaven nearest it collapsed, bones snapping, blood bursting from eyes and ears. Even the Saurus recoiled, hissing as they were forced back. Something inside the tomb stirred. Not alive, not truly, but not dead either. A presence, vast and cold, brushing against the minds in the chamber. A warrior king who had conquered worlds and been laid to rest to dream eternally of war. The fracture sealed itself with a thunderous crack. The presence withdrew. The temple guards surged forward once more, renewed fury driving them. Skaven defenses collapsed entirely. One by one, Skrit's followers fell, torn apart by blade and claw. The engineer was vaporized as the solar engine finally ruptured, its core imploding in a burst of searing light that flung bodies across the chamber. Skrit was hurled against the sarcophagus, the impact cracking ribs and driving the breath from his lungs. He slid down its smooth surface, leaving a smear of blood and filth. He laughed, a wet, hysterical sound. Still, alive, he rasped, dragging himself to his feet. The chamber burned around him, alarms howling in tones too ancient to name. The city was sealing itself, walls grinding shut, passages collapsing. A cold one stalked toward him, jaws dripping. Skrit raised his halberd, warpstone blade flickering weakly. "I am Skrit Norbite," he snarled. "I take from gods." The cold one lunged. As its jaws closed, the solar engine's dying pulse washed over them both, and the chamber vanished in blinding light. Deep beneath the jungle, Xual-Tec continued its purge stone by stone, blood by blood, while above the rotting canopy shuddered, unaware of the ancient wrath rising beneath its roots. Chapter 4. The Serpent God Awakens. Xual-Tec trembled, not as a city buckling under siege or the tremor of distant earthquakes, but as a living thing rupturing from within like a serpent shedding a skin of sanity. Its geomantic arteries, those delicate crystalline lattices of control and stability, had been twisted, fouled by the reckless infusion of warpstone. Sacred patterns once etched by the old ones to align stars and silence chaos now flickered erratically. Glyphs screamed in tongues only slan minds could grasp. The city had ceased being dead and become something worse, awakened and wounded, and something buried deep, sealed beneath wards, older than time remembered its purpose. The last few survivors of Clanfricht scrambled down fractured temple steps, claws skittering over stone, blackened by the recent flare of geomantic backlash. They no longer followed Skrit out of loyalty, only momentum and the primal instinct that even a dying warlord offered more shelter than the chaos behind them. At the head of the ragged column, Skrit Norbite's scorched fur clung in clumps to his armor, his claws twitching with residual arcane feedback. His eyes had changed. One still glittered red with the cunning of the born Skaven killer, but the other, damaged by the solar engine's final pulse, shone dim green, flickering like a guttering candle of warp taint. He did not blink anymore. He saw things now, things just beneath the surface of reality. He muttered constantly as they pressed deeper into the city's underlayers. "It is coming. Great hunger thing. God machine. Blood-slick coil." They reached the central maintenance shaft, a deep borehole that descended for miles beneath Xual-Tec into the crust of Lustria. Once used by Lizardmen to tap geothermal energy and slake the roots of their power grid, now it was the only path that hadn't collapsed under the city's spasming self-destruction. And there it waited. Salvation, or something like it. The Doomborer, a weapon engine of impossible weight and suicidal intent, barely contained within its thick iron shell. Long abandoned after tunneling their way into Xual-Tec's outer layers, it had lain dormant until now. Its warp drive, a bloated crystal core dripping with condensate, pulsed faintly unstable. Perfect. Skrit clambered into the command cabin, drool flecking his lips. Down, down, farther, escape tunnel, burrow, but we don't know what's... A storm vermin began. Skrit spun and drove his rusted halberd into the speaker's throat. I said down. The Doomborer activated with a deafening howl, its engines belching clouds of green flame. Pistons screamed, gears shrieked, and the massive front drill ringed in warp metal teeth and crackling with charged malice spun to life. The floor beneath it crumbled, and the machine plunged into darkness, its wake collapsing behind it, like a cave-in swallowing hope. Above, Xual-Tec's doom continued. The geomantic matrix failed completely. Cracks spread across the once perfect alignments of the plaza stones, and lines of glowing power shattered like brittle glass. Air became heavy, almost fluid, charged with malignant polarity. Lightning, emerald, gold, and violet danced along the edges of reality, distorting angles, unraveling architecture. Within the grand temple, deep in the sanctum of Xual-Tec, a final contingency activated. The final thang. At first, it was only light, a slow bleeding of crimson through the air, as though the stone itself had begun to weep blood. Then came the sound, a deep, rattling hiss, echoing from nowhere and everywhere, vibrating through the bones of the dead and the living alike. The glyph circle shattered. The floor split wide, revealing a colossal coil of jade and obsidian, half fused into the earth. Slowly it rose, scales clicking into place with a grinding of magic and stone, each segment larger than a temple. The Serpent god construct a divine engine in Xual-Tec's image, reared its massive head, crowned with a crest of golden plates, each etched with glyphs of vengeance. Its eyes opened. No orbs of glass or flesh, but hollow sockets burning with divine fire, coalesced rage, and the will of a dead Slan who had foreseen this moment eons before. It screamed, not in voice but in a frequency that cracked tiles, ruptured skulls, and turned air to mist. Saurus warriors fell to one knee in reverence. Cold ones howled and scattered like rats before the flame. The construct surged forward, coiling through the temple, its bulk crushing chambers and tearing through ancient avenues as it hunted downward, following the scent of warp taint, of defilement, of skrit. The doom borer drilled. Downward, ever downward. It scraped through layers of crystal, volcanic stone, and buried bones. Geomantic filaments snapped like harp strings in its wake, bleeding light and fury. The ride was hell. Inside the vessel, sparks leapt from consoles, half-melted glyphs flickered wildly, and the smell of cooked flesh wafted from ruptured coolant pipes. The storm vermin retched. One clawed at his face, screaming about scales beneath his skin. Another began gnawing his own tail in silence. Warp exposure, fear, pressure, all of it twisted the Skaven minds until only panic and instinct remained. But skrit, Laufed. He stood hunched over the console, his furless face slick with sweat, blood pooling from one torn ear. "Almost out," he hissed. "Tunnel to freedom. City dies behind. They forget skrit. I live." But the city did not forget. Behind them, far above, the tunnels began to collapse, not randomly, but in sequence, as if crushed deliberately, as if something massive, something intelligent, were following them, consuming the city it once protected in pursuit of vengeance. The first glimpse came through the aft viewing, slit a flicker of red glow, then the shattering of stone. One storm vermin turned, eyes wide. What is they?" The doom borer shuddered. Something had hit it. Not rock, teeth. A shrieking sound followed, like a temple being torn in half. No, Skrit shrieked, slamming levers and ramming power into the core. The drill surged forward, faster, smoke pouring from the engine vents. Another impact, this time from below. The rear half of the machine buckled, cracks spiderwebbed across the view screens. Steam hissed. A corpse, once an engineer, was sucked into the gearworks with a wet pop. Then silence. A tunnel opened before them. A subterranean cathedral, black stone veined with molten gold, where an old fault line had carved a yawning maw into the crust. They burst into it like a bullet, the doom borer sparking, screaming, dying. Skrit leapt from the collapsing hull as it scraped to a halt and toppled on its side. The last survivors staggered into the cathedral. For a moment, they breathed, but the silence, it was too clean. Then came the voice, not heard, but imposed. It pushed into the gaps in their thoughts, into the filth of Skaven minds, and filled them with a cold clarity. It was not words, but an imperative. Suffer for what you've done. The wall behind them burst inward. The serpent god construct entered the chamber, impossibly vast. Its coils spilled in after it, scale upon scale of jade and obsidian. Its eyes burned, its mouth opened, and it struck. The tail swept wide, catching 3 Skaven and flinging them into the darkness. Claws like spears punched into the stone. Glyphs flared across its body, words of divine judgment. Skrit screamed and hurled a warp-lock bomb. The device exploded with green fire, but the flames bent around the serpent, swallowed by runes that shimmered and erased the warp taint as easily as one wipes filth from a floor. The serpent struck again, this time directly at Skrit. The warlord dove rolled, came up bleeding, clutching a single sliver of warpstone. His last. He held it high. "No, I am chosen, blessed of the horned rat. You cannot." The serpent exhaled. It was not fire, not air, but light, a beam of pure geomantic energy, the antithesis of all corruption. It hit Skrit full in the chest, and in that moment he was undone. Flesh turned to ash, warpstone imploded, soul flayed and scattered like dust. When it was done, nothing remained of Skrit nor bite, but a smear of soot. The serpent watched a moment longer. Then, silent, it withdrew into the dark, its coils dragging back into the ruined core of Xual-Tec. Behind it, the city groaned once more and began to collapse. Chapter 5. Buried in gold and blood, the walls of the world groaned. Far beneath the surface of Lustria, beyond the reach of sun or sky, the central vault of Xual-Tec opened like a festering wound into the deep earth. The descent had been treacherous, through a vertical shaft choked with broken masonry and writhing roots, down half-submerged stairwells that twisted impossibly, as if the geometry of the city itself had gone mad. Even the remaining Skaven, mad with hunger, grief, and the howling echo of divine wrath, dared not name what they'd passed to get here. Shadows moved in places that had no light. The air itself whispered. Warlord Skrit Norbite stumbled across the threshold into the vault on cracked feet, claws bloody from the climb. He no longer felt pain, only the pull, that aching, gnawing compulsion that dragged his thoughts forward, towards something shining just out of reach. His halberd was long gone. His armor hung in scorched tatters. One of his horns had snapped clean from his skull in the collapse of the doom-borer shaft, leaving a puckered socket that wept pus and warp flame smoke. But he had made it, and there it was, the vault. It defied description. Not a room, but a temple within a tomb, submerged partly beneath black, stagnant water that lapped at the golden stairs. Massive support columns rose from below the floodline, carved in the form of coiled serpents, their eyes inset with rubies larger than skulls. The water shimmered faintly, betraying some lingering enchantment beneath its stillness. Light came from nowhere, and everywhere reflected off the walls, off piles of treasure that sprawled in chaotic drifts like the hordes of ancient dragons. Gold, so much gold. Idols, shaped in the likeness of gods long forgotten. Crowns heavy with gemstones that pulsed like living eyes. Blades of star metal and orbs of polished obsidian etched with rotating glyphs. In one corner, A massive bronze gong lay dented and silent, its surface marked with dried blood centuries old. Every piece radiated power, but twisted, distorted by the proximity of the warp corruption Skrit had dragged down with him. Behind him, the few who remained followed. Twitching, gaunt storm vermin with dull eyes, their fur falling away in wet clumps. A single engineer, his jaw fused shut by a failed spell, and 2 clan rats, barely older than kits, gibbering in the gloom. They moved like shadows beneath a greater shadow, stumbling toward the trove as if they no longer controlled their limbs. Skrit fell to his knees at the edge of the golden mound. His claws sank into coins that melted at his touch, reshaping into his old banners, his name etched upon them in burning runes. He howled with joy and sorrow, digging deeper, deeper, until he struck something solid. A mask. It was Lizardmen in design, but wrong, warped by centuries of ambient magic and tainted by his presence. It bore a snarling maw of fangs and eyes like twin voids. It pulsed once in his grip. He put it on. The mask melded to his flesh instantly. He screamed, but he did not remove it. Instead, he rose straighter now, his ruined spine cracking audibly as it realigned. Power flowed into him. His shredded muscles knotted anew, twitching with unnatural vigor. Symbols bloomed on his skin, trailing down his arms like vines. He knew things now. The vault was not built to hold wealth. It was built to bait, a trap, a tomb for the ambitious. It was a wound in the world, stitched with gold to lure fools like him. A place of containment, not celebration. But it was too late. He had become its key. A tremor shook the vault. Water rippled, gold clinked and tumbled from unstable piles. Somewhere deep beneath the surface, something stirred. Skrit turned his head slowly, the mask groaning as it twisted his features. It comes, and it did. The walls of the chamber split not from structural collapse, but deliberate force. Obsidian cracked in long, perfect lines. Runes flared to life and then extinguished in quick succession, unable to hold back the thing now bearing down upon them. The far side of the chamber ruptured in a bloom of stone and steam, as though the earth had been punched from the inside. The serpent god construct arrived. Its head emerged from the hole, eyes ablaze, body shedding stone and soil as it forced its way into the chamber. Its form was battered now, coils cracked from its pursuit, crest splintered, but still unbowed. Still divine? It reared up, and the vault seemed suddenly tiny, too small to contain such fury. The Skaven fled without orders, gibbering and screaming. One dove into the black water, only to vanish beneath the surface with a single, muted yelp. Another tripped over a chest of ancient scrolls and was crushed under falling treasure as the chamber shook again. Skrit did not move. He stood on the mound, arms outstretched, mask pulsing like a heart. "I am king now," he bellowed. "See me, god thing. I wear your death." The serpent god struck. Its mouth opened, not wide, but enough. The lunge was precise, almost reverent. It engulfed Skrit in one smooth motion, snapping shut with a finality that silenced the vault. There was no blood, only silence. Then the construct turned. It did not destroy the rest. It did not need to. It left. The ground shook for hours after, long after the thing had vanished into the deeper roots of the world. The vault remained, but broken. Its spells died, its lights flickered, and the water rose slowly, swallowing the lower levels of treasure. The chamber, once divine, became a tomb again. Weeks passed. Time was lost to those who survived. The few Skaven who escaped the vault crawled through collapsing tunnels and flooded passages, driven forward by madness and starvation. They fed on one another. They screamed in the dark. They saw glyphs in the stone and clawed at them until their paws bled. Some heard Skrit's voice, muffled by the earth, whispering secrets through the stone. Only 3 emerged. They came out of a split in the jungle earth, at the edge of a sluggish river, beneath the dawn mists of Lustria's blood-wet morning. Thin, hollow-eyed, fur falling in clumps, they staggered from the mud like things reborn in filth. One still clutched a medallion made of bone and sapphire, its glyphs twitching faintly. Another carried a staff taken from the vault, now whispering promises in a language that melted dreams. None of them spoke. They simply stared at the sky, as if seeing it for the first time, then began to walk, dragging their relics behind them. They did not know where they were going, only that something waited. Behind them, Xual-Tec shuddered once more. Then it began to collapse. The jungle swallowed it slowly, vines knotting over shattered ziggurats, roots wrenching stone apart. The geomantic web folded in on itself like an ancient lung exhaling its last breath. The city did not die. It withdrew, folding back into the dream of the old ones, until the next fool came to wake it. The river rolled on, the sun rose, and beneath the soil, the serpent god slept again, curled around its secrets, dreaming of blood and betrayal, of gold and the hunger that always, always returns.